know that stars have life cycles? They're born, formed from floating clouds of gas and dust in space. They live, shining brightly from the heat and light they produce within. And eventually, after a long time, they get old and they die, some of them ending their lives in a spectacular explosion. It's much like the way a butterfly goes through its life cycle. A caterpillar hatches from an egg, the caterpillar grows and forms a chrysalis, and then it transforms into an adult butterfly. These students are going to represent the clumps of gas and dust that form stars. All stars are born in a star-forming nebula, a giant cloud of gas and dust in space. The force of gravity draws the clumps of gas together. The gases begin to heat up, and fusion begins. As the hydrogen atoms smash together, they combine to form helium and release a huge amount of light and heat. A star is born. What happens next depends on the size of the star that has formed. We'll start with a smaller star, one the size of our sun. Stars like our sun have lives that measure in billions of years. In a main sequence star, the time period where a star spends most of its life, the forces of gravity and fusion balance one another, and the star is in a steady state. After most of the fuel in the core of the star is used up, the forces in the core overpower gravity, and the outer layers of the star expand. The star becomes a red giant. If our sun is the size of a grain of sand, a giant star is about the size of an orange. Once the rest of the fuel in the core is used up, the star will suddenly collapse in on itself, and the outer layers of gas drift away into space. The material that remains at the core is called a white dwarf. If a star has a lot more mass, though, and is much larger than our sun, say 10 times larger, its life ends a little differently. A high-mass star forms in the same way that a smaller star does. Clumps of gas are drawn together by the forces of gravity and form a star. However, they have much shorter lives and may only live for millions of years. When a massive star reaches the later part of its life and begins fusing elements other than hydrogen, it expands to a huge size and becomes a supergiant. If a giant star is the size of an orange, a supergiant is about the size of a beach ball. Once a supergiant has run out of fuel in its core, its life ends in a massive explosion. The star collapses in on itself, and the outer layers of the star explode outwards into space. All that remains of the star will either be a neutron star, a very tiny, very dense chunk of material that would weigh thousands of pounds in a single teaspoon, or a black hole, depending on just how big the massive star was in the first place. We can observe stars in the various stages of their life cycle in the night sky. The Orion Nebula, found in the constellation of Orion near his belt, is a region where stars are being formed. Our sun is a low-mass main sequence star. Remember, when low-mass stars get old, they form giant stars. Aldebaran, a star marking the eye of Taurus the Bull, is a giant star. Larger stars form supergiants when they get old. Rigel and Betelgeuse, stars in the constellation Orion, are supergiants and will one day end their lives in massive explosions. In the year 1054, a supernova was observed from Earth near the tip of one of Taurus's horns. What is left of that explosion, the Crab Nebula, is visible through a telescope. Luckily for us here on Earth, even though there are many stars whose lives will end in supernovae, none of them are close enough to Earth to affect us. So why should it matter to us what happens to a star? Most of the matter in the universe is hydrogen and helium. Only because of the processes that occur within stars do we have the elements that are essential for the existence of life. Carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, gold, iron, and even oxygen would not exist if it were not for stars being born and dying. So the planets, us, and all other life on Earth are literally the stuff stars are made of.